Hi there, today we're going to have a look at doing a quite straightforward refurbishment job on this steel cased Victorian rim latch. Now this is described as a latch rather than a lock because it's got a thumb latch to lock it but no key. So obviously this would have been used on the inside of doors, mainly in bathrooms and bedrooms, that kind of thing. Now it's got the two most common problems that we see with these. One is that thumb latch isn't working, chances are it's just been painted in. But more importantly, the main bolt there just isn't returning. So if you pop your handle in from the other side, you can open it, but then it doesn't pop back open again to catch on that keep. So overall, fairly useless at the minute. Okay, let's pop this off and have a look, see what's going on inside. Now normally all these types of locks and latches have normally got one, possibly three machine screws in the back. Just got to pop that off. Now I always look to try and keep a little bit of pressure on this because what they can do sometimes is pop open and then you lose all the parts. So we'll just slide that off. At this point I always take a photograph. So when it comes to putting it back together, you know where all the pieces are going to go. Okay, that looks fairly obvious why that's not working. As we can see, what that spring isn't doing, it just isn't returning that bolt. So fairly easy to remedy. So what we'll do is we'll just pop all those parts out. That is tight. There we go. Okay, so what I think we'll do is we'll take that away, we'll give that a paint strip, get all that paint off there, we'll give the inside a clean out, we'll give all the parts a clean, look to replace that spring, and then we'll pop it all back together. Okay, here's our lock back from being stripped. It's actually come out quite nice. We can see the remnants of the little brass maker's name there, as well as a bit of Gothic detail in there on the inside. But more importantly, what we have got is ourselves a nice new spring. Now these are really easy to find online. You can either search by rim lock spring, rim latch spring, and they're also sometimes known as leaf springs. As you can see, a lot of spring in that one compared to the amount of spring in the old one. Now when you buy these, what you want to make sure that you're looking for is you get them the right length. So obviously we already know that this one here has to go between that pin there and those two pins there. So we look to measure those lengths and make sure that when we purchase our leaf spring it's going to fit, and that collar there fits over like that. Okay, before we put it all together, I always like to give the parts a little bit of a clean. So it's fairly simple. Get a bit of lubricating fluid, and then with a bit of wire wool, just look to take off any excess material, any bits of rust on there or any old grease. Just give that a wipe off, and then all ready to go back together. Okay, so before we look to put it back together, I always like to give the inside of the case a little bit of spray of lubricating fluid and then just rub off any excess, because what you're going to find is that some of these parts do actually rub up against this steel case, so you want to make sure they've all got a little bit of lubrication on them. Okay, so let's put them back together. Okay, now let's pop in our new spring. Oh yes, you can already feel that that's working much better. You'd also want to just double check on the back of the back plate, there'll be another little leaf spring there, and what that's going to do is just pushing down on there to make sure that doesn't go all loose inside that steel case. So just slide this back on and just make sure that that collar there, the spindle centre, fits over that back plate to make sure that doesn't come loose at all. So we'll just pop that screw back in. And test it out. Lovely. Resistance on there. So there we go, all done and ready to screw back onto your door.